What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. So we have the New York Jets facing the Pittsburgh Steelers this coming Sunday, and it's a match that should bode well for us, ideally, considering that not only is the Steelers offense struggling in the midst of Ben Roethlisberger retiring, seeing Mitchell Trubisky at the helm, and kind of moving into a youth movement that they haven't really seen a whole lot during Mike Tomlin's tenure so far. We have the Kenny Pickett debate over there. We also have a rash of injuries that have been hitting them. So let's go ahead and break it down. With the New York Jets side of things, we know that we have the all-important question that we should have answers for ideally this morning based on Robert Saleh's time frame of what he said the medical staff will provide. Zach Wilson, I'm hoping, leads the offense out this Sunday. That's the biggest question mark. Will the Steelers prepare for Joe Flacco? Will they prepare for Zach Wilson? And then what does that mean for our offense? Everybody's going to talk about the majority of our offensive struggles being that Joe Flacco was a statue. We've seen how leaky our pass protection has been so far, and there's a lot of ways that we can mitigate that if we insert Zach Wilson. For starters, he's automatically more mobile. So the fact that we can go back to doing things like bootlegs, opening up play action a lot more effectively, and doing rollouts and various things like that should boost helping out the offensive line, which will in turn help out the rest of the offense. We've seen Garrett Wilson already frequently getting open, as well as Elijah Moore. So this should make a smooth transition for Zach Wilson, if nothing else. And ideally, this will help mitigate the effect of Connor McDermott, most likely starting at left tackle, which will also be a question mark. But based on the last minute additions we've been able to make at the tackle spot, it looks like it's going to be him. I would say just expect a lot of help, a lot of chipping from the tight ends, different things of that nature. But the secondary piece is going to be that, along with maybe a designed run or two here and there, we should get back to trying to run our offense through our running game, which is something we have not been able to do because we've been down in the first quarter through all three games so far. And switching over to the Steelers side, with this transition of Mitchell Trubisky at the helm, the offense has been the least effective that it's been for probably the past 12 to 15 years. They're in the bottom third of essentially every category that you can think of offensively that really is going to matter. Yards, rushing, conversion rate, red zone offense. So all in all, we have a struggling team that we're coming up against that can't really get things going, although they do have a very promising wide receiver unit. George Pickens looks great. They still have Deontay that's out there doing big things. So they have two or three men that can line up and win out on the boundary if allowed. The offensive line for them has also been a little bit leaky. So in a perfect world, much like we thought with Joe Burrows and the Cincinnati Bengals, we should ideally be able to be taking advantage of this fact. Kevin Dotson has an injury for them, so if we want to run and go through some of the injuries that have been impacting them this season so far, it started off pretty early. They had running back Jeremy Nichols go down. Anthony Miller at wide receiver goes down. Carl Joseph at safety goes down. Their injured reserve list starts to pile up pretty quickly. Carlin's Pistel at cornerback ends up going to injured reserve. Calvin Austin III goes to injured reserve. And then most recently, the biggest news, of course, was that TJ Watt ended up being placed on injured reserve with the pectoral issue that they thought really was going to be a torn muscle. Looks like they have much better news than expected, but that is an immediate huge plus for us that we don't have to worry about facing the reigning defensive player of the year and everything that he does to morph this defense into a top-notch unit. So not having to necessarily compete with that would have been a tall task for, I'm assuming Connor McDermott now, but even Max Mitchell, who's been able to hold his own against some very formidable pass rushing duos. TJ Watt's on a whole nother level, essentially up there with the Aaron Donalds of the world in terms of top playmakers at their positions. We did have two recent injuries as well, though, which should bode well if they end up being consistent and the duration of this bleeds into our Sunday game with them. So Akilo Witherspoon at cornerback and Minkah Fitzpatrick, which is the last huge one for us, has been in the concussion protocol since they faced the Browns. And ideally, you usually see a 2-week window of players returning with that. So it's pretty unlikely that that does occur with Minkah Fitzpatrick, but you never know. It's a little bit different for everybody. So as long as he gets cleared by Sunday, you would imagine they'll play him, even though Tomlin generally would prefer, much like other coaches, his player gets playing time during the week. So we have the fact that there's two huge superstars that are going to be out at pretty important positions, with TJ Watt going down, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was already a natural leader on that team anyways. I mean, since he got traded from the Dolphins to the Steelers, he's completely blossomed into one of, probably the top 3 best safeties in the NFL. And you can see his transformational effect on the defense. And even if his short time during this season so far being healthy, he's already made a number of plays. He's had a pick 6. He's had one other pick, I believe. I think he's had a fumble recovery, and then it looks like he was on his way to breaking tackle records for his personal career best, as well as potentially the team at his position again. So it's going to definitely be a huge miss for them if Minkah Fitzpatrick cannot suit up. But again, in terms of game plan and what I think we're expecting, with the run defense being pretty poor for the Steelers, at least in this early going of the season, I think this is the perfect time for us to really buckle down. I've seen Fireman Ed put a stat out there that Michael Carter and Breece Hall have not had a single game where they've both been able collectively to reach 20 rushes per game, which is unacceptable. Ideally, you're thinking between the both of them somewhere between 12 and 15 snaps, 12 and 20 snaps per game, or rushing attempts anyways, would probably be what we were looking at. But with us having to play catch up so much, I mean, the stat out there for Joe Flacco is crazy. 155 pass attempts, I think it was, within the first 3 games of the season. Absolutely wild. And we got to get away from that. Even with Zach Wilson at the helm, no matter how effective this passing offense can be, we can't go out there trotting quarterbacks that are going to throw 40, 50 times in a game. It doesn't make sense. Even Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers and them, you don't see that same consistent trend either. Somewhere in the 30 range, 25 to 30 range is probably going to be where you say we've had an optimal game plan. Either way, though, balance-wise, you go with the hot hand. So I'm looking to personally see that we can get Breece Hall and Michael Carter going early and often. We've seen them pop. We've seen the big playability so far. We've seen Michael Carter's elusiveness still be there in plenty of fashion. And, right now we're running at a good rate. We've almost hit 100-yard games for all 3 weeks so far. We've been essentially 25 yards, and this is in general terms, 25 yards short or less in each game essentially in the first week, and we've had minimal rushing attempts. So if we can really put an emphasis on that, I think it would change the entire dynamic of things. We've seen Tyler Conklin come on within this last week. He's finally had a bounce back game. He looks involved. He looks like he's focused. And it's kind of the version of the preseason hero that we've been seeing all this time. Zach Wilson's had an early connection with them all during the preseason camp, so I think that will continue. And then hopefully this gets Elijah Moore back on track. Garrett Wilson continues to excel. We'll see if Corey Davis continues to pull kind of this vanishing act until a big play is made. Although he's hauling in receptions at, I think it's an 18.6 yard clip. So when he is making his presence known, it is for a big play, which is nice to know. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I wanted to keep it pretty light instead of diving into all of the things, but those are the injury concerns. I don't think I'm saying anything crazy in terms of how we'll look to attack the Steelers, but I will say prediction-wise, I don't think this is going to be a close game for either team. I will do kind of the plus and minus of it. If the Steelers win, I will say it'll probably be a 23 victory. If the Jets win, I would say it'll probably be something like 17 17-30, I would say. I would look to see us have a pretty big offensive explosion this week. Considering the defenses wore out between injuries, the offense seems incapable of being able to have consistent drives, have a decent third down conversion rate, and with Mitchell Trubisky still trying to figure things out there, a running game that's suffering behind Najee Harris for the moment, who's still dealing with ankle ailments. It seems like the stars are kind of aligning for us. So hopefully we finish this week 2-2. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below, and I will catch up with you guys again. Peace.